Lesson 4, I will know and relate metric units to place value units in order to express measurements in different units. So we've been talking about several different types of metric units over the last 3 lessons. We've talked about length, mass, and we've also talked about liquid capacity. And today we're going to talk about how you can relate those units to place value and how you can convert from one unit to the other. So go ahead and get the next blank page in your math journal. I want you to go ahead and write today's date and lesson 4, and we're just going to call this convert units. Okay, so I want you to think for just a minute. Don't write anything in your math journal, but I just want you to think, what relationship have you discovered between milliliters and liters? And when it talks about relationship, it's talking about how when you compare them. And when you compare milliliters and liters, you can see that liters are 1,000 times greater than milliliters. I do want you to write this math equation in your math journal. I want you to put 1 liter is equal to 1,000 times 1 milliliter. And what that means is 1 liter is 1,000 times greater than 1 milliliter. And I also want you to think about the relationship between grams and kilograms and meters and kilometers, and try to write a math equation just like this, only for grams and kilograms and meters and kilometers. Would your equation look like this? 1 kilogram is 1,000 times greater than 1 gram, and 1 kilometer is 1,000 times greater than 1 meter. That's the relationship between those units. Now, in thinking about these units, think about some similar relationships that we've already discussed so far. These are just some prefixes that are used in the metric system: kilometers, hectometers, decimeters, and this is the unit, and then decimeters, centimeters, and millimeters. And this can work for grams or liters as well. But when you look at this chart, this should remind you of a chart that we've been using quite a bit. Does this remind you of a place value chart? This works a lot like a place value chart. For example, whenever we're using a place value chart and we go to the left, it gets 10 times greater, and we go to the right, it gets 10 times less. So if this were meters, and you can kind of see meters, it's really, really tiny there, but if this were a meter and you were going to the left, centimeters are 1/100th the size of a meter. Or if you started here with centimeters and you had 1 centimeter, like if you had 1 centimeter, let me get my pen. If this were 1 centimeter, and then when I would go to the left, this would be 10 times greater, so this would be 10 decimeters, which would be 100 meters, which would be 1,000 decimeters, which would be 10,000 hectometers, which would be 100,000 kilometers. So that's why they like to use meters, because they're so much easier to convert. Okay, let's go ahead and look at our problem set. We're going to kind of work through some of that together. All right, so put your name on your problem set, and let's go ahead and start filling out this chart. So you can see that we're starting with the smaller unit first. So if I have a centimeter, we can think of ones can be compared with hundreds because they're 100 times larger. So we're kind of comparing this with a place value chart. So if this is a centimeter, then the 100 would kind of be like a meter, because a meter is 100 times greater than a centimeter. So if the smaller unit is a 1 and the larger unit is 1,000, we can think of that as the same relationship as grams and kilograms. Because a kilogram is 1,000 times greater than a gram. So if this is a meter and this is a kilometer, it's 1,000 times as large. We can think of this as milliliter, and what do you think would go here? Liter, right? And then if this is centimeter and this is kilometer, it's not going to be 1,000 times as large, because if we have, it's going to be 100,000 times as large. Kind of like when we went back to this screen back here. I'm going to take you back here for just a second. So remember, if this was the centimeter, then the kilometer was 100,000 times as large. Okay, so if we had 429 is 4 hundredths, and that would be 29 1. So remember, we're relating this to place value. So that's why we keep going back from place value to the metric system. So 429 centimeters is 4 meters, 29 centimeters. Okay. 2,456 is 2,456 ones, like 2,456 meters is 2 kilometers and 456 meters. Okay, so 13,709 is 13 thousands. 709 ones, like 13,709 grams is 13 kilograms, and 709, what do you think this would be? Grams, right? All right, so what number would be 456,829 ones? That'd be 456,829. Okay, see if you can do B. How many milliliters would there be in 456 liters, 829 milliliters? You put 456,829. See how these compare? They're showing you how you can think of thousands and ones the same as liters and milliliters. Okay, so take a look at this question. Use words, equations, or pictures to show and explain how metric units are like and not like place value units. I want you to stop and think about that for a minute and put down some of your thoughts. What you put may or may not be the same thing as what I put, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. After you're finished writing down your thoughts, you can come back and look at what I put. Okay, here's what I came up with. I put they are alike because I can rename them. Like I can say 12,000 ones is the same thing as 1,200 ones, or 1,200 milliliters is the same thing as 1 liter and 200 milliliters. So that's how it's like place value. But they are not alike because I don't know how to rename any measurements that are equal to tens. Like in the metric system, there's nothing that's equal to tens like there is in the place value system. Maybe you came up with something better or different. All right, now we're going to do a little bit of comparing. Okay, so I'm noticing that sometimes whenever we have these greater than, less than, or equal to, sometimes we're just guessing. Let's try to not do that. Okay, so if I have 893,503 milliliters, let's think about what this would be in milliliters. Since this is milliliters and this is liters and milliliters, let's change this to milliliters. So this would be 89,353 milliliters. Now compare that to this. This would obviously be greater than. Okay, try this one. So I've got meters and I've got kilometers. So I can either change this to meters or I can change this to kilometers and meters. All right, so this would be 4 kilometers, 103 meters, and this is 410 kilometers. Compared to 4 kilometers, this is obviously greater than. All right, so now this is meters and this is centimeters. So let's change this to meters. Okay, try to do C by yourself and see what you come up with. And then come back and see if your answer is the same as mine. Okay, so I've got meters and centimeters, so I can either change this to centimeters or I can change this to meters into centimeters. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so there are 100 centimeters in a meter. So I'm going to change this to centimeters. So if I have 5,339 meters, that's like 5,339 hundredths. So these would actually be all right, so now we're going to place these following measurements on the number line. So you can see that all of these are meters, some of these are kilometers and meters. So in order to put these, you have to kind of really think of you're comparing, okay? So I've got 2 kilometers, 415 meters. That's the same thing as 2,415 meters. So that will go about right here. And I've got 2,379 meters. I bet you can figure out where that goes. See if you can figure out where this one goes. Put it all the way down here because this is the same thing as 2,305 meters. Then here I have centimeters, and these are all meters. So remember that this is like this is 100 times greater than meters. So if I go back, this would be 2,455 meters. So that would go about right here. I'm writing underneath of it because it's really hard for me to write small with this pen. Okay? See if you can do number 7 by yourself. It's the same exact thing. All right, you're going to come through here, and first of all, I'm noticing that these are all kilograms, so I can just go ahead and label these if that makes it easier. All right, so I've got 2 kilograms, 900 grams. That will go here. And I've got 3,500 grams. That would be 3 kilograms, 500 grams. 1 kilogram, 500 grams. All right, this is the same thing as this. Now that's hard to read, but I was trying to write this. And then 750 grams, that's going to be less than 1 kilogram. All right, good luck on your exit slip.